What's up, everybody? How are you guys doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel. And today, with the year almost over, I naturally need to come back and discuss the state of Metroid going into 2023. At this point, I think it's kind of becoming an annual tradition for me to discuss the state of the Metroid franchise, and at this point, the state of Metroid Prime 4 going into every single new year. I've done it the past few years. I'm ahead of the curve by about a week or so this time. We're only 11 days away from the new year, which is really crazy. 2023 is 11 days away. It's very exciting. It's very weird because, I don't know, the older you get, the faster time goes. And for me, it does feel like 2022 began only a few months ago. But no, it was a year ago because it's almost 2023. It's crazy. And as you guys obviously know, I'm a Metroid guy, my favorite franchise, and I spend so much of my time on this channel dedicated to talking about Metroid and theorizing and speculating and celebrating the awesomeness of the franchise, especially after Metroid Dread released last year and just blew our minds. And so part of this annual tradition that I'm joking about is talking about the state of everything Metroid going into the new year, like I said. So with less than 2 weeks to go before 2023 begins, at the end of last year, I talked about the state of Metroid in 2022. Now 2022 is behind us, so we can more accurately talk about what things might look like going into 2023. And of course, the obvious elephant in the room is that nothing happened in terms of Metroid in 2022. And I did certainly predict that something would happen surrounding the Metroid franchise or a new release or significant news in 2022. When the year began, I said, I think we're going to see something great from Metroid this year. And I was wrong. Nothing happened. We did not see anything on Metroid Prime 4 like I thought. We did not get a Metroid Prime Trilogy or a Metroid Prime remake, even though people claiming to know inside information very much believed that it would happen and made certain bets about how much they believed it was going to happen. None of that happened. I didn't make those claims. I wasn't trying to leak inside information or anything. I was just predicting as a fan. I mean, sure, I've heard things. Most of us have heard things, but nothing is for sure until it's for sure. Other folks claiming to know things were incorrect in what they said. I made predictions as a fan going into the year that I really thought we would see Metroid Prime 4 this year, and we didn't. It's worth noting that Nintendo deciding not to do anything for like the E3 summer month of June definitely hurt things, and to their credit, E3 didn't even happen this year, right? So other companies came together in June to do presentations. Nintendo, we thought, would choose to do the same, and they didn't. And so maybe the lack of E3 would have maybe hurt their decision to show Metroid Prime 4 or a Prime Trilogy or whatever. But at the same time, if they were ready to do it this year, they could have done it anyway. And so the fact that 2022 has come and gone, and we didn't see hide nor hair of anything from Metroid Prime, Trilogy, Remake, Prime 4, whatever, just tells me that 2022 just wasn't the year and that they're not ready. Now, I addressed this recently that the one thing that did sort of happen in terms of Metroid in 2022 was the quote-unquote DLC content or the updates to Metroid Dread that rolled out this year, which is fine. And, you know, I've shared my opinions on it, you know, not trying to be a negative Nancy here because, hello, Metroid Dread is like an amazing freaking game. But, you know, these updates, you know, the DLC or whatever you want to call it, these updates to Metroid Dread, they just didn't really do much for me because it wasn't really new content. Adding new difficulty modes is fine, but it doesn't really change my experience with the game. Creating a boss rush mode also doesn't do anything for me. To me, what would have been significant is new content to play, a new area to explore, a new planet, some additional story cutscenes or story implications that could have added on to what Metroid Dread itself did. Maybe even like an extra Zero Suit mission like they did back when Zero Mission came out on the Game Boy Advance, or any one of those kinds of things would have felt way more exciting to me, and it would have been significant and new. Instead, they added some modes and features, and again, it's fine. I'm not saying that it shouldn't have happened, but what it wasn't was actual new Metroid content for 2022. That did not happen even with these updates to Metroid Dread. So what does this mean for the state of Metroid, and what does it mean for Metroid in 2023? Well, all I can do is continue to guess and speculate like I've done every year for like the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. And I mean, hey, I was wrong in 2022. I just guessed that we would see something and I was wrong. Nothing happened. So I'm going to guess again and I might be wrong again. But that's the nature of guessing, right? Because I don't work for Nintendo. I haven't heard anything specific about 2023. So I can only just have fun, throwing out speculation about what maybe could happen. And so what does this mean for Metroid in 2023? Well, because I have a personal belief that I think new hardware is going to be shown and maybe even released next year, whether it's a super significant Pro upgrade or a Switch 2 or a new console. I mean, you guys, in almost every video anymore, I have to bring it up in some fashion. But because I think that's probably going to happen next year, I also think and have believed for a while that Metroid Prime 4, if we focus on Prime 4, which is the most exciting thing here, I think that if Nintendo does do what I think they're going to do and show us this new hardware, Metroid Prime 4 might be part of that general announcement or part of what they decide to show alongside of it, or even in the same year that they show it, because I think Metroid Prime 4, as every year comes and goes without any new information on that game, I am more and more convinced that Metroid Prime 4 is going to release on their next hardware. It might be cross-gen. In fact, that is my prediction, that it'll also get a Switch release because the install base is too big for them to ignore, and the Metroid franchise could use the help of that install base. It's just the truth. Even though Metroid Dread has done amazing by selling over 3 million copies and becoming the best-selling Metroid game, the series could still use any bit of help it can get. So you can't ignore the Switch's install base, but I think they're not showing it to us because they want to first reveal it as something that's going to release on their next hardware. Cross-gen or not, I think they want the first reveal of Metroid Prime 4 to be able to also come with the news that it's going to be on the next-gen hardware, and hopefully that includes showing us what it's going to look like on this next hardware. And so then it just comes down to whether or not 2023 is the time that they would do all of these things. I think it is, but I could be wrong, so only time will tell. We've got 12 months ahead of us to see how 2023 is going to play out, right? So I think we're going to see the new Nintendo console next year. I also think it's very possible it releases. And I also think that along with it will come news about Metroid Prime 4. In some way, I think it's going to be tied to information about their next generation hardware or their next upgrade to the Switch, whatever, because I think if they just upgrade the Switch and they don't release a Switch 2, I think it's going to be a huge leap in power and do things that the current Switch is not even close to capable of. It has to do something significant, which is why a next-gen Metroid Prime 4 reveal or whatever is probably going to be part of it. I just think that. I could be wrong, and we'll see if 2024 is the time for this information instead, but that's just what I feel. Now, as far as the Metroid Prime Trilogy, an HD remaster, or a full-on remake of Metroid Prime 1, I'm starting to lose hope. And for a lot of you, you might laugh and say, bro, you should have lost hope 3 years ago. And honestly, you're right. I probably should have lost hope 3 years ago because a lot of people lost hope 3 years ago. And maybe I should have done the same thing. But I just have such a complicated feeling about this whole thing because I've said it in so many videos. It is such an obvious win for Nintendo to re-release these games, especially with Metroid Prime 4 sometime in the future. It's an obvious win. It is millions of dollars on the table for Nintendo to just have. They can even do the bare minimum and release a basic HD polish to any one of those 3 games and release those even digitally only on the Switch. And keep in mind, I want something more significant than that. But if they played it as simple as possible and did just that, they would clean up in terms of money. And with Metroid Prime 4 on the horizon, why would you not want to reintroduce people to this franchise? And so it's so hard to let go of it, not just because people have talked about it behind the scenes for years, but because it is so mind-numbingly obvious for Nintendo to do, and it seems in line with the things that they like to do, that it's so hard to let go of the idea of these games being real. But every year comes and goes, and there's nothing to show for it. So what do? We even had Jeff Grubb saying he's going to shave his entire freaking head if it doesn't happen this year, and it still hasn't happened. And that guy has known inside information before. So what do we do with the Prime Trilogy? I don't know. I think I might finally just be moving past it. And if they surprise us next year with it, great. But I don't know if I can really believe in it the same way I traditionally have. I'll be very curious to hear what you guys have to say in the comments and how you respond to the idea, but I don't know. Do we keep believing in the Prime Trilogy? Is it not feeling foolish at this point to keep believing in it? I think that for those of us who have held on this long, and I'm someone who's held on this long, you yourself watching might be one of those people, you might not have, but for any one of us who has held on this long, it kind of feels silly at this point to expect it, you know? As much sense as it makes, and as much as we've heard talk about it from people who claim to know whatever, and I've heard these things, you guys, I truly have. But where are we? Like, a Prime Trilogy re-release doesn't need to be next-gen the way maybe Metroid Prime 4 does. So why not release that now on the Switch that has 110 freaking million units out there? Like, it's such obvious money on the table. And so, I don't know. I want to hear what you guys think. I think I'm kind of moving past it. I'm open to when it finally does show up, and then I just get to be excited that it's going to happen. But until then, I think I have to just move past it. I don't know what to say about this anymore. I own multiple copies of the original 3 games anyway. I don't need this to be able to play the games because I freaking own them because they're my favorite games ever. But this Switch port remaster thing, I don't know, man. Then we get into the conversation about a remake. And that was something I think Emily Rogers first put out there. I actually discussed it as just like a fan fun theory years ago, but I never really thought it was something that would be on the table. And then a few years later, Emily Rogers said she heard that it's happening. And I was like, whoa, dude, like I totally talked about that years ago. But that was just, again, just for fun, not because I thought it was happening. And so that idea becomes extremely exciting to me because I would rather play a remake of my favorite game of all time, Metroid Prime 1, than I would just an HD remaster of the 3 games. You know, if you do to Metroid Prime what Square did to Final Fantasy VII, hello, or what Capcom did to Resident Evil 2 and 3 and now 4, way more exciting because that becomes a whole new experience than just taking the games we already have and making them HD. And I would love to see that happen. Of course, I'm not going to say no to it. But if you ask me to pick, I want the full remake. I want the Final Fantasy VII treatment to Metroid Prime 1 than just the same games, but in HD. To me, that's a better value than the 3 games in HD. You may disagree, and that's okay, but that's my personal choice and my personal thought. So that's an exciting prospect too, but I kind of believe in that less than I believe in the Prime Trilogy, honestly, because that requires more time and money and resources from Nintendo, and the easiest, cheapest thing for them to do to make the most profit is to just port the 3 games in HD. Even if they make them digital only, that makes more sense, but I don't even know that I believe in that anymore. So what hope does the Prime 1 remake have? In my brain, not much. And so to summarize my thoughts, and I don't know if I would call them predictions per se, because I'm kind of at a loss anymore with all of this, but my thoughts and general guesses about where things could go for Metroid in 2023 is, you know, I do think we're going to see or have confirmation of the next Nintendo hardware, whatever that is. I even think there's a great chance that it releases and we play it. And I'll say what I said with Metroid Prime 4. I think seeing that game for the first time and getting an idea of the graphics, the story, the title, the release date is all going to coincide with the same year that we get confirmation of Nintendo's next generation. So I think that has the best chance of happening in 2023. The new hardware and something concrete and an official unveiling of Metroid Prime 4. I think that will happen next year. Metroid Prime Trilogy HD, Metroid Prime Remake, whatever the hell could be happening with that stuff, I'm kind of writing it off for now. And I'll just allow myself to have my mind blown and be excited beyond belief if it actually does show up next year. But right now, I don't really have faith in those games happening in 2023. It's sad to say, but I don't think Nintendo has given us any reason to believe anything different. And again, I've held on hope longer than most people have. But I think it's time that I let it go. So those are my thoughts. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but this is just kind of what I think we might see from Metroid in 2023.